So in the first video, we made this HTML page that just has a bunch of lorem ipsum text in it, and it's got these divs, wrap, header, main, sidebar, and footer. And it didn't look very nice so far. It's just got our body, background color, and foreground color. And all these divs are just falling consecutively in order down the page, and they're all just going the full width across the page. So that's kind of the next thing, is to make some CSS that's going to get this looking a little bit better. So I'm going to save, and we'll be for a little bit working in the code. So if you go to code view, instead of on the HTML code, which we were doing before, make sure you're on the layout styles.css. And that's the code for the CSS styles, which is actually a separate file. Okay, it's that other one that we saved that's down here in our files panel. A lot of CSS is edited through kind of the easy way, through the CSS panel over here and double clicking and getting the dialog box. And that's really the way I prefer to do most CSS. But when you're just getting something started like this, sometimes it's faster and easier to just type it in. You just have to watch out for all the little colons and semicolons and things. Other than that, it makes it go a lot faster. So for example, something we need to make this thing work right is just to zero out our margins. So I'm just going to type margin colon space 0 and then semicolon. And then on the next line, the other thing we need is padding set to 0. And this is the margin and the padding actually for the whole page. We've got a background color and a color, and that's about all. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Font hyphen size, colon, and then just set it on large. Okay, so make sure each of these has a colon after it, and then a space, and then whatever you're setting it to, and then a semicolon. So those should all be pink, which makes them stand out a little bit, or magenta, whatever that is. And then also, your color coding should be, these are lighter blue, these are darker blue, I guess it is, or black. And then you should be good. And you got your closing brace and starting brace for every style declaration like this, and that's for the body tag. So if you view design view, you can see this really didn't do much. It spread things out a little more all the way to the edge. Okay, so going back to code view, now we're just going to make the CSS for all our layout boxes that'll start positioning these divs and constraining them sort of the way we want them. And just to label this section so that I know what it is later when I'm looking at it, I'm going to make another comment. We made HTML comments in video 1, but we're going to make CSS comments, which of course work differently. And the way they start is with a slash and then a star. And I'm actually going to do a few more stars just to kind of fence off this section here. And then I'm just going to say the layout boxes. And then maybe a few more stars. I like stars. And end it with a star or asterisk, and then a slash, like that. And that closes the comment. Okay, so that's just kind of a label for this section. And then we need styles for all of our IDs. And the way you start a style for an ID is with a hashtag, also known as number sign or pound sign. And the first one we need that we made is for wrap, and then a starting brace and a closing brace. Okay, and I'm going to put a space inside there so I can go ahead and type in it. And just like before, I'm going to use copy and paste, Command C, Command V, Command V. This is one of the reasons why working in code can be faster, is if you're using copy and paste. So remember, we had wrap that contained everything, and then we had header, and we had main, and sidebar, and then footer. So this is where the styles for each of those divs will go. And we're going to start out by setting the wrap to only be a certain fixed width so it won't take up the whole screen no matter how big somebody makes their browser window. So you just type width, colon, and we're going to make this one 960 px, which stands for pixels. There's no space in there. And then you do a semicolon like that. And already, if you go to Design View, maybe, and you make your window big enough in Dreamweaver, you'll be able to see that it did limit it, so it's not going to stretch all the way across anymore. And some other stuff we need in there is for margin again. And just type 12px space and then auto. And what that will do, the first section here is for the top and bottom margins. So that will push things down on the page 12 pixels, give us a little space up at the top and at the bottom. And then auto is for the left and right margins. And what that'll do is it'll have the effect of centering everything that's inside our wrap in the middle of the browser window. It'll automatically pull in the equal amounts on both sides to a width of 960, so it'll be centered. So just to test that, I'm just going back to Design View. If I make my browser window big enough, or make my Dreamweaver design window big enough, so there it is, and it's centering, and you can see I've got my little 12 pixel margin on the top, and there's also one on the bottom. Okay, so we'll keep going here. And I'm going to add in a background color. It's background hyphen color, colon, and then I'm just going to do kind of a very light gray, I think. Let's see, the body was all C's. Actually, you can make it, maybe it'd be easier not to make them gray. Let's just do some other random colors. So I'll do kind of a really light yellow. So I'm just clicking on that and then hit semicolon. Okay, so that's my background color for the wrap. And then it'll be easier to add borders later, I think, so we'll wait on that. Just to see what we got right now. There's the wrap background color of yellow. Okay, so we're going to keep going, and in header, we're going to add in some padding. Padding is the space inside the box, around the edge of the box, instead of outside like the margin is. And 5px space 10px, and then a semicolon. And then what that does is 5 pixels is the top and bottom padding, 10 is the left and right padding. So if you go to Design View, this is the only thing in my header right now, but there's the 5 pixels on top just above that highlighting, and then the 10 on the left. And if this was wide enough, you'd see 10 pixels padding on the other side. And let's make that a different background color. We're just kind of throwing in these colors just to hold the place here. You can either click on this color picker, or you can just type in a code, or you can type in a color name. Choose really interesting colors here, so you'll definitely want to change them with your color scheme later on. And I may do some alignment stuff with the header later, but that may be easier through the dialog boxes. Oh yeah, Pepto-Bismol pink there. And for the main styles, what we're going to do is float colon right, and we'll see what that does in a second, and then a semicolon. I'm also going to limit the width of main, because what's going to happen is main and sidebar should actually be side by side, fitting inside the wrap, which is 960 pixels wide. So I'm going to tell it to make this 720 pixels for the width. I'm also going to give it some padding of 10 pixels and a different background color. So background hyphen color. You may have noticed I forgot to put hyphen color on this other one. That's because there's also a shorthand background notation where you can include other stuff in there. So actually for color, either one works. So for the main content area, I need to be able to read the text, so I think I'll just do white and a semicolon. Okay, so here's my main content area with a width of only 720 out of the full 960 that's inside the wrap. And floating right, you can see now what effect that had. Like if I delete that temporarily and go back to here, there it is without the float right. It's on the left side and coming first because it's first in the code in my HTML. So if I go to source code, remember header and then main came first before sidebar, which starts there. So that's why main is on the left and sidebar is still down below it. Okay, but if I add the float back in, float right makes it scoot over to the right side, and then whatever comes after it can come up and wrap up next to it. So that's sidebar over here is doing that, and also my footer is. This is actually my footer right here, which we'll see when we get our colors in there. So there's the main, and then sidebar. Since my main area is floating right, I'm going to make my sidebar float left. Okay, and then a width that I've figured will work in here that'll fit is 200 pixels. Okay, and a padding of 10 pixels again. And let's do a background color for sidebar. And let's just choose something not too obnoxious here. I'm staying with light colors so I can read my text for now. And let's go ahead and do footer. And footer, I'm just going to do the padding for right now. And we'll come back and add something to this in a second. 5 pixels. 10 pixels again. So 5 on the top and bottom, 10 on the left and right. And background hyphen color. Doesn't work if you don't spell it right. And go with that. So when I go to design view, so now you can see this is my sidebar and this is my footer, and they're both coming up next to there. So what we need in the footer to make it stay below both of them where it's supposed to be is to tell it to clear these floats, because it's still just wrapping up there because main is floating to the right. So because we could have 3 columns or more, you can have multiple things floating and wrapping up next to them. So what I'm going to add in, and you can either have this first or after these two we already did, is you have to tell it to clear around these floats to force it to start kind of on its own space down there. And so we just say clear both. That'll clear both the left and the right floats. And so if I go to design view, there it is down there, my footer at the bottom where it's supposed to be. Sidebar, to make it go clear all the way to the bottom, there are a lot of weird tricks you can use to try to make it do that. There's no easy way. You can't set the height because we don't know how tall this thing's going to be. It depends on how much content's in there. So the usual way to do it is to make this yellow, which is coming from the wrapper background color, make it the same background color as your sidebar. And then you can't tell where the sidebar ends. So that's what I'm going to do, is look at wrap, and my background color there was FFC, and set my sidebar to that same color, or I could go the other way around. And then you can't tell where they end. Next video, we'll go on from here.